a big welcome to everyone who's tuning in. This is kind of first name basis. This is our kind of remote podcast series for TribalScale that we've been holding for the past couple of weeks now, and just talking to some of the industry leaders. So it's a very informal conversation and on a variety of kind of relevant tech and innovation topics. So to kind of kick things off, I'm Ailsa. I'm the design manager here at TribalScale. And Rachel and I kind of work very closely between design and marketing. Rachel is our content marketer. And today we're chatting remotely with Avery Swartz, founder and CEO of CampTech and author of the incredible new book, See You on the Internet. Hey, Avery.
Hey.
How's it going today?
Pretty good. You know, it's sunny, so can't complain about that. Yep.
Do you want to just give a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Avery, and I'm based in Toronto. And I do a lot of work with small businesses and nonprofits and charities. My background was actually from the arts, like forever ago. I used to work as an arts administrator for theater companies. And then I went back to school to become a graphic and web designer. And I ran a web design studio for close to 10 years. And while I was doing web design, I launched a side project that was the idea of myself and some of my kind of nerdy friends were teaching workshops for nonprofits, small businesses, charities, the kind of people that I was helping get their websites online. We were running workshops on weekends to teach them a little bit more about, about the web, about social media, about email marketing, online advertising. And then that, like the demand for that just got so big that I spun it out as its own company. And that company is called CampTech. It's now almost 8 years old.
Wow.
And then, CampTech over the years has had lots of different iterations. We've had locations in Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, a few pop-up locations around Ontario. Right now, CampTech is purely an online experience for the moment. We're running a whole bunch of webinars. We're in the middle of a really cool kind of a little deal that we've been doing with the province of Ontario, where we're running some really practical digital marketing webinars and in-person workshops. Right now, we're not doing the in-person workshops for small businesses, particularly Main Street style businesses in Ontario. And then also, as you mentioned, I wrote a book. Here's my book, See You on the Internet. This book was published, its birthday, its publication date was March 10, 2020, wow, which is 48 hours before the lockdown began,
right,
in Ontario. But the book is out and it is still selling and people can still get it. And it's a book that's pretty much everything that we teach at CampTech. It's all of the really practical digital marketing advice that we give to small businesses.
So as unfortunate as it is that you had to launch a book campaign for your publicist or whoever's helping you with that, probably thought, well, this is gonna be a nightmare. As unfortunate that might be, it's actually it works with the content of your book. In a way, it complements it, for lack of a better term, of trying to compare those two things, because you can put sort of your advice into your own mouth and show people what you're talking about in the written word and in your everyday marketing of your own book.
Yeah, absolutely. A few things have happened since the lockdown with regards to the book. More than once, somebody has said to me, like, wow, you called your book See You on the Internet. Did you know? I'm like, no, I did not know that we were going to be in the middle of a global pandemic.
Like, that would be some great insight into the future.
I should have given us all a heads up there, Avery.
Like, what kind of a jerk would I be? I started the virus as a publicity campaign. But the other thing is that you're absolutely right, Rachel. It's not like I wrote a book about, the history of Iceland or something. Like I did write a book about how digital can really help with your business. So it's a bit like what's that term sometimes people in our industry use, dog fooding, like when you're using your own advice on your own project.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. I do know a thing or two about how to market something online.
So can you go into like some examples? Like, is there anything that you've pulled directly from your book that you can think of that you've had to utilize during the last, how long has it been now? 6 weeks, I guess, since your
Yeah.
launch?
Yeah. So, the book opens with talking about how important it is to have goals for any digital initiative you're doing, and that your goals need to tie back to your business goal or your organizational goal, and then you set your goals for your digital, and you set some realistic metrics for what you're hoping to achieve that will indicate whether or not you're getting any closer to that goal. And so the big thing for me, and for all of us really in the last few weeks, is making some realistic adjustments to our goals. I did have this long list of both quantitative and qualitative goals for my book launch that have now completely been changed. But the overarching goal of trying to just get as much helpful information as I can out to the people that need it is still very much there. But the way that I get that out to people has changed. And a practical example of that is the book launched March 10, and then for the back half of March, all of April, all of May, and most of June, I had a cross-country book tour planned, where I was going to be like in person, talking at conferences and making appearances and talking to small businesses and charities and nonprofits. And that all, of course, went completely out the window.
Right.
But I have been able to do a number of things just like this, like virtual appearances, to still help get some of the messages of the book out. So same goal, just slightly different delivery method.
Right. So in terms of having to put all of your marketing onto virtual platforms and digital platforms, what type of advice, like what are some top tips for making that transition a little easier? If a company was focusing on going out in the field and promoting that way something, and they've been forced this last month to go digitally.
Yeah, shout out to someone named Priya Parker. And Priya Parker is just an amazing person. And she just launched a podcast with the New York Times. So you can listen to Priya Parker's New York Times podcast. Parker wrote a book that's fantastic. I highly recommend. Maybe you can get it on ebook from your library. It's called The Art of Gathering. And it's this phenomenal book that talks about some of the thoughtfulness that goes into bringing people together, and whether that means a dinner party, or prepping for a wedding or a conference or an online Zoom chat, or whatever you're doing. Some of the ideas about being really, really thoughtful around, first of all, like, this sounds really obvious, but it amazes me how many people forget. Maybe you should identify the purpose of why you're even getting together in the first place. Why are you're trying to get together? So if you were going to get together in person, whether that be your weekly stand-up meeting or a giant conference, if you're going to move that virtually, has the purpose changed? Maybe it's a good idea to reinforce why you are even having this meeting or this conference or whatever you're doing, and then talk about what are the goals and how you're going to achieve those goals, and what maybe has or hasn't changed in the new format. So all of these digital tools we have, like Zoom, we can use some of the screen sharing, we can use raise your hand, we can use polling or Q&A or breakout rooms, looking at all the different tools that we have and how those may or may not align with the purpose of what you're trying to achieve with the gathering. So I wish I came up with that myself, but like, a massive shout out to Priya Parker, because she is always talking about that kind of stuff. And like, big recommendation, get yourself a copy of The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker before you schedule your next meeting.
Yeah, I think we definitely have far too many meetings. So it's always good to be able to kind of cut those down and decide which are kind of the most essential to kind of keep going.
Absolutely.
So Avery, how important would you say that kind of digital marketing is for kind of small businesses like right now? Like, what are some of the practical things that, let's say TribalScale could be doing to kind of get our name out there and to make sure that we stay connected with folks during this time?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing just anecdotally, but also there is a bit of data coming out of, I know Facebook has released some data about how during the lockdown, in Canada and also globally, people are just rushing to the internet. It's where the New York Times had this piece called "We All Live in Zoom Now," where it's where everything really tends to happen. And the data that's coming out of Facebook is that people that even weren't on Facebook so much in the last year or two have now all rushed back to it.
Right.
It's where we're all finding our connection both personally and professionally. So for a small business, either in a lockdown or even just in general, being online and having a digital connection with your community, with your target customer or client, it just allows for so much more than its analog components years ago. So like in the book, I talk about how, really small businesses can compete online in a way that they just couldn't, decades ago. You needed a giant advertising budget. You really needed, literally billboards or, subway advertisements or something, where through social media, through email marketing, even if you're talking about potentially using online advertising, the barrier to entry is so much lower. Where if you think about it, take something like, say, Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody starts the same on Twitter. There's no difference between a personal account and a professional account on Twitter.
Right.
So when you start brand new, either trying to be a brand on Twitter or just an individual, you're starting in the exact same place that Coca-Cola started on Twitter. It's what you then do with that and how you grow from there. But in terms of it being kind of like an equalizer, and also just a lower barrier to entry, it doesn't cost anything to join most social media platforms. Now, it definitely will cost you time and effort to grow on those platforms. But for small business, it's like a lifeline that just was not there before.
Right, especially now, right, where we have kind of brick and mortar buildings and kind of stores that are almost incapable of being able to continue their businesses right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say, no, of course, I'm like an evangelist of the power of the internet and the power of digital, but I also am realistic and I know that the digital isn't going to save every single business right now. There are different types of organizations where certain things you do are more or less easily translatable, I guess, from the offline world to the online world. But it is an amazing way to connect with your community and to connect with your customers and clients.
So tell us a little bit about what made you decide to put all of this knowledge into a book format?
Okay, so I first started pretty seriously thinking about writing a book 4 years ago. So that's how long it is. I use Evernote to just on my phone, on my laptop, to just randomly dump my thoughts. And so the cool thing about that is it's searchable. So I did a search to see when did I first start to write a to-do list or something that had anything to do with think about topics for a book. And I found notes from 4 years ago. I had started to really think about this. There's a big difference between thinking about writing a book and then starting to do it and then actually doing it. I thought about it for a while. It took me a long time to come up with different concepts and different kind of approaches. And I then, worked on proposals. Then there were pitches to publishers. That was a wild ride. And then finally, once I knew that, okay, here's the publisher, here's what we're going to do, here's the concept, that was approximately July, August, September of 2018. So that's how long it takes. So then we started to really, really flesh it out and do preliminary writing into say the early winter of that year. Then that takes us into say like January, February, March. Yeah, January, February, March, April of 2019 is when I did the lion's share of the writing. That was the like serious head down, like just pounding away, and then editing. Oh my gosh, so much editing. You know, first you do structural editing, where you're like slashing stuff, moving big concepts around, and then you do a few more drafts, and then you do more like editing for tone, and then you do editing that's more like line by line for consistency, and then you do editing for proofreading. It got to the point where I was like, I cannot read this thing anymore. And the manuscript was like ready to go on press in September of 2019. And then the whole publishing world just takes forever, right? So there was like there was design. Sorry, manuscript was pretty much ready in August. Then there was design and layout, which was quite fast, but then going on press, and then the actual printing, and then the distribution takes months to like get to the distributors and the warehouses. I've learned so much about how how warehousing works, and how books then get into not just Amazon, but how they get into Indigo and Barnes and Noble and actual bookstores like around the world. And then I recorded the audiobook. So
oh my goodness.
Like all of this stuff, so that by the time, you know, knowing that we were always working towards this March 2020 release date, and then you like really ramp up your publicity and your marketing in about like 4 to 6 weeks before the actual publication date. But it's been quite a living, breathing thing inside my brain for like a solid 2 years, really.
Yeah, it's
Well,
a long time.
Yeah, and it's incredible to hear you just like lay it out in a timeline like that, and notice like how many different promotional platforms exist that you can sort of tackle at once. Like there's the online publicity that we're talking about, digital marketing, but then there's everything that goes into like the physical thing, the warehouses, the distribution. Like it's just, there are so many outlets, and you don't really think about them all together like that. So it's incredible to hear you lay them all out in one concept on multiple platforms. It's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, the book was printed in Manitoba because that's where an awesome printer is, and
Cool.
then from there, like a bunch of copies were sent to a warehouse in Tennessee, because apparently that's where there's a big book warehouse.
Oh, okay.
And then a bunch of copies were sent to a warehouse on the West Coast, and like
Wow.
I was getting all these reports from my publisher, like because I was just really curious, and I kept asking all these questions, but like, where is the baby today? Like, the baby's on an airplane going to Texas.
I actually think this is a really good segue. Where can we pick up a copy right now, since bookstores are closed? You've gone to all the trouble of like getting them to kind of warehouses in Tennessee. Where can we grab a copy?
So the book is available in 3 formats. It's available in print book, it's available in ebook, and it is now also finally available in audiobook. There was a bit of a delay with getting the audiobook out, but it dropped last week. So print books, you can get them wherever books are sold. So if you like to order from Amazon, that's totally fine, go for it. But if you prefer to order from an independent bookseller, then I say please do, because you know they really need your support right now. So any independent bookseller either already carries it or can order the book. I know that it's in stock at Indigo in Canada, it's in stock at Barnes and Noble in America, and then a whole bunch of indie bookstores in Toronto and Vancouver and San Francisco and Seattle. I've heard that a lot of them still have a few copies in stock. For the ebook, it is available on Kindle, on Kobo, and a whole bunch of libraries are also carrying it in their, like I know the Toronto Public Library uses Overdrive and Libby, so they have ebook copies. I think there's a waiting list at the Toronto Public Library right now, but you know, we're not going anywhere. Put it on hold. It'll come in eventually. And then the audiobook is on Audible. So you can get that there, and then you can listen to me in your ears for 5.5 hours.
That's incredible.
That sounds like a good deal. I don't
it's good for putting you to sleep. You can't sleep? Pop in my audiobook. You'll be out.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second. So how is kind of Camp Tech going right now? Like, I know that obviously things have changed a lot since March. Can you tell us a little bit about the changes you've had to make to Camp Tech, like during this period?
Yeah, for sure. So as much as I love Camp Tech and believe that it is essential to my heart, Camp Tech is technically a non-essential business. The teaching, like a private company teaching tech skills right now, is technically not on the list of essential businesses, which is the right decision. So all of our in-person workshops are completely suspended. We're not doing any of those right now. But the thing that is going is what I mentioned before, this thing that we're working on called the Ontario Digital Main Street Initiative, where we're doing 2 webinars this week, another 2 next week, then another one the week after that. Like, we're just like hammering these out. And we're seeing hundreds of people registering for these Zoom webinars. They're all on practical tech topics, tune in for 90 minutes. Some of them are taught by me, a lot of them are taught by my colleagues. So that's keeping us busy at the moment. We usually have, another whole department of teaching. We call it group training because it is kind of corporate training. Like, we do train some corporations, but we mostly train groups of small businesses, groups of nonprofits, or groups of charities. So for example, we'll go in and train, the association of so-and-so charitable organizations, or we regularly used to train the Library of Parliament in Ottawa. So all of that stuff is also totally on hold right now, unless we move some of it to digital, which I think might happen. But I'll be completely honest with you and the world that's watching right now. We haven't had any of those sales at the moment. We've had a few inquiries, but nobody as of right now has said, I absolutely want to continue with my corporate training and we want to do the entire thing online. I think that's because most companies are still just wrapping their head around how the heck they're handling the lockdown and what they are and aren't going to do. And training is one of those things that for some companies, it's a good thing to do with your staff right now, but then for some companies, they're like, no, we got to cut that out. So we're very, very happy to be continuing in the webinar series because that's giving us something to do. And then, planning, right? It's so hard as the CEO of a company to do any kind of planning for, like, any forecasting we had for 2020. It was like, just throw that right out the window.
Yeah.
I keep a like many business owners, I keep a spreadsheet that has my kind of modeling and my runway and all that stuff moving forward. And I have a version that's saved on my desktop that I call COVID disaster edition.
Love it.
Because you kind of have to do that, right? Like, you have to do the modeling and you have to do the forecasting to be like, how much runway do we actually have if this gets really, really bad? Right. Because we're a non-essential business, because we've had to scale back, fingers crossed, we will be able to get the wage subsidy and some of those other things that the government has announced. But it's just day by day over here.
Yeah, I think it's the same for a lot of small businesses right now, just, playing things by ear and hoping that this thing passes over sooner rather than later. Yeah, it's a good time to learn though. So dial in for those webinars and learn something new, right?
Exactly. And, I've been kind of like, there's been a lot of thoughts running around in my head of like, honestly, do I want to write another book? Because right now is a fairly good time to be doing some research. I think there is this kind of thing that's happening right now that's unlike, there's a lot of things happening right now that are unlike any other time in history. But one of them that I've noticed is I am sensing a bit of a willingness of people that are a little bit more willing to talk to each other. Like there may be a bit of a magical time right now where like someone that you maybe wanted to approach and ask, for a 15-minute, can I just ask you a few questions, where a few months ago they would have been like, oh, no, I'm way too busy. But now I sense more of a willingness for people to be like, yeah, sure, I got 15 minutes. I'm not going anywhere. Might as well have a chat. So maybe like I'm kind of thinking like, who do I want to talk to right now that I probably couldn't talk to any other time?
Right.
I don't know. Oprah, you think she'd answer?
I don't know, but if she does, can you get me a line in there? Because
Yeah, sure.
I feel like okay, great.
And you know, that reminds me of, we did a podcast last week, and it was with Farhan Tharwar, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Sure.
Yeah, and he's VP over at Shopify of engineering, and he was saying, like, he was talking a lot about how right now, if you've been laid off or you've got more time on your hands, it's a great time to become creative and really tap into the creative side, because you have time, but you can start building up more of your personal portfolio, your personal brand, do things like these podcasts or write a blog or create more of a social media presence. And I think that leads us into a bit more of a conversation on some tips from you on digital marketing and marketing yourself, because I know a lot of people are going through a transition right now, or they're having to look at different things that they might have to embark on in their future. And they're wondering, how do I digital market my small business, or how do I digital market myself to find a new job, to find a new avenue to walk down? And where do I begin? Like, if I'm you, or if I'm me, sorry, opening your book for the first time and I don't know anything about digital marketing, where do I begin?
Excellent question, Rachel. So I say start where you are. And let's treat it as an iterative process. So let's not bite off way too more than we can chew. Let's start with, at first you have to just kind of throw the spaghetti at the wall to see what's going to stick. Like, you have some kind of inclination about maybe who you want to talk to and where that you might find them. But at first you're just kind of throwing out really fast and quick experiments to see if you're reaching who you want to reach. So it depends on who you're targeting. If you want to talk to the business community, maybe you want to start spending more time on LinkedIn. You want to talk to the general public and you have more of a visual kind of platform, then go hang on Instagram. Oh my gosh, everybody's on Instagram right now, it seems. If you prefer kind of more long form kind of writing, maybe this is a really, really good time to spin up an email newsletter. So it kind of depends on what kind of content you want to create and also who you want to talk to. I'm a big fan of the idea of trying to just give a lot online, give a lot of value, give either a bit of your expertise, give a bit of your opinions about things, give, if you're funny, oh my gosh, do we ever need your humor? Please give us some humor on the internet. And really engage in dialogues and community and conversations. You'll know if it's working or not. If you're posting and you're just not getting any engagement, like nobody's liking, nobody's commenting, then you might be either pushing out the wrong kind of message or you're in the wrong room. That's the beautiful thing about social media in particular, is that there's lots of different rooms. If like you're hanging on LinkedIn and you're not liking it, like perhaps TikTok is more your flavor. Like go over there. So I think it's about trying to just start where you are, try out a few things, see how it's going, make sure you measure, see, and measurement doesn't have to be this like, okay, go and put on a white lab coat and now we're going to do a very formal report for our, big measurement. Like, no. You can kind of tell what's working and what's not working from getting some quick and easy reports. And then fine tune from there. If you find that you're getting a little bit of traction on a particular channel, double down on it. I think it's much better to be active and present on, say, 1 or 2 social media channels than spreading yourself too thin and trying to be on 5 and just doing a bad job across the board. Especially right now where I think it's really important that it's actually you or the person from your company, whoever the representative is, actually in the platform doing things. In general, when there's not a crisis, I really like scheduling tools. I love Hootsuite. I love scheduling some social media messages, but I haven't put out a scheduled tweet in over 6 weeks. Like it just does, I'm afraid that it's going to land at the wrong time.
Right.
So I'm in there actually, I'm probably putting out less content, but it's more valuable content because it's actually coming directly from me in the moment.
Right. You're reacting to kind of the situation and the timing more than anything right now. That makes sense. So
yeah, I mean,
as a,
go ahead, Ailsa.
I was just going to say, as a designer, I'm kind of all about kind of the creative side of things. And I know that Rachel is very much on, as a content writer, is all about kind of the copy side of things. So we're going to have a mini battle.
Yeah, let's fight it out.
Oh, no.
No, I'm just kidding. But what do you feel is kind of best to focus on for small businesses? Like, do you find that kind of visuals hit a lot more harder? Like, does the copy make a huge difference? Like, I'm complete noob at kind of copywriting. So what would I put with my kind of creative visuals, for instance?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there is no one answer, of course. Of course, there's no right answer. You need both. Really, really successful messaging and communications and marketing campaigns almost always have both really powerful imagery and fantastic design, and also killer copywriting. For small business, I think those that are trying to do everything on the cheap, they will often go towards content and copy first and try and sacrifice design. But we've all seen when bad design then just looks aesthetically gross, or there's a bad mix between what the design is saying and the target market. Or what I find is often a problem with small business is inconsistency in design. I'm like, come on, you don't have to have a massive, huge, style guide that was made for you by some Cannes Lion winning, firm. But come on, like let's try to use the same colors every time. I think a lot of organizations, if they are trying to do any fine tuning right now, I'm seeing those that are trying to do some fine tuning around their websites, maybe perhaps enhancing some of the functionality of their website. And it's hard when you're under the hood, if you're tinkering around and say you're adding some e-com or the ability to buy gift cards. It's hard to not also want to futz a little bit with the presentation of that content, and then also maybe change up. Shout out to another amazing Toronto digital advisor is April Dunford, who's a positioning expert. And April wrote a fantastic book called Obviously Awesome about how to do positioning when you're doing marketing for any size business. And April is active on Twitter, and she said something really early into the lockdown. She was talking about the positioning of products and services, and talking about how you position in a downturn. And because so much of your positioning statement is about the value that you bring to your target customer or client. So whether you are, doing takeaway sandwiches, or whether you are, doing a multi-million-dollar campaign where you're, I don't know, making auto parts or something, the value and how you state your value can be different in a downturn than it is when there's an economic upswing. So in that moment, that's where things can get kind of interesting, particularly with copywriting, with highlighting a particular value point that maybe wasn't so important before. Maybe right now you need to highlight that you have a really, really flexible return policy. In an upswing, who cares? But in a downturn, that's what people really, really want to know right now. So on the copy side, that's a really interesting challenge to organizations of all sizes, which is how do you match what you are putting out as your value with what people are actually valuing right now, because there might be a little bit of a disconnect there. And then of course on the design side, if the way that you're presenting that content isn't resonating, then people aren't going to like slow their scroll. Who cares? They're just going to blow right by it.
Right. Yeah, totally. I can, absolutely see that. And I think it's even true for us kind of as TribalScale. We're obviously a company that provides like software development tools and kind of ability to other companies to help build their apps. Obviously, a lot of people are not wanting to build apps right now, like they don't necessarily have the budget to be able to do that. So we're thinking a lot about, what our value can be during this time. And maybe that's helping you innovate on your apps, innovate on, your digital presence so that you can kind of become more digital than you were before if you were a brick and mortar building.
Yeah, I love that idea of just and like now I'm just going to shout out to all my friends. Another amazing Toronto area small business owner who has a strong background in communications is my friend Erin Burry. Erin's currently working at Willful Wills, and like here's an app that helps people create online wills. I mean, oh my gosh. This is a business that actually is quite essential right now. But one of the things that Erin and her partner in life and in love, her partner Kevin, realized really quickly was that there's this kind of archaic law in Ontario that you can do an online will, but then you have to print it and sign it. You can't digitally print it, even though you can do a digital online will. And so Erin and Kevin realized, oh my gosh, when people are at home, so many people don't have printers. One very small thing is going to be potentially the big issue for a lot of people right now. So they went on the internet and just bought a bunch of printers and set up a printing station in their house. And they're like the value that they're offering right now is they're letting people use their online service to do their wills, and then they are physically printing them and mailing them to people.
Oh, cool. That's
but
awesome.
Like how cool to realize that just that tiny little thing was potentially going to be a big hurdle for their customers right now, where it wasn't a hurdle a few months ago. So they had to buy some printers and some paper, but in terms of like the overall cost to their business, that's nothing for them to be able to keep serving their clients. Like I thought that was so brilliant.
Yeah, that's a huge value add for them, particularly right now. Like I know even my parents were looking to kind of update their will during this time. And, that question came, they're back in the UK and they have to get someone to witness and sign it. And they were like, well, I can't come within 6 feet of anyone. So how do I get them to sign my witness will? Yeah, it's really interesting the kind of the businesses that we're seeing booming right now, like Willful. I had actually heard about that before we even kind of jumped on the call, that they had been getting like massive traffic right now. So it's very, very interesting to see these apps and this kind of these services that might not have been used to their fullest, before kind of COVID hit, being, almost essential now to us.
For sure.
So Avery, how did you get started in digital marketing? Like, has it always been a passion or?
No, actually for quite a long time, I thought marketing was kind of gross and it was too salesy and like, I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. Like I went to art school. I worked as an arts administrator for a long time. So how I really like got into marketing in particular and how I wrapped my head around it not being disgusting and salesy and pushy,
right?
Because like so much of marketing just sounds so icky. How I really got my head around it was when I realized that really good marketing can be extremely creative. So that really appeals to my arts background. But also it's about communicating a message and reaching the right customer or client. So when you do marketing right, it doesn't feel icky or salesy at all. It just feels like you're hanging out with your friends. Like you're a big challenge that I had, and part of the reason why it did take me so long to write my book, especially at first, was I had really bad imposter syndrome and this overwhelming feeling that anything that I could possibly say has already been said before, which is 100% true. There, like, I know I'm not even selling my book. I'm encouraging you not to buy my book, but not true. There's nothing in my book that hasn't been said before. We have so much information at our fingertips, and you can learn all of the stuff that I talk about from lots of different places. The only thing that makes my book a little bit different is it's in my voice.
Right.
And so for the right person that I'm trying to talk to, there's a really nice dialogue happening. And it took me a long time to trust that my voice was enough. Because I would say like, oh, well, don't listen to me. Go listen to that person over there. They're an expert. Or go listen to that person over there. They know this so much more than me. So it's when I realized, and it's a bit of a cliche when people say that the best kind of marketing is authentic or organic or, trust your own voice. But it's so totally true, especially if we're getting back to that idea of how do you kind of market yourself, especially online right now, like what Farhan was talking about. If you try and be somebody else, you're going to suck. So you might as well just be yourself.
Right.
And it took me a long time to just kind of like embrace this kind of goofy, kind of oddball, helpful, funny, lovely, weird way that I have of talking, and realizing that the people really do like to learn from me. So stop trying to, and oh gosh, I had drafts of writing where it was like in this very formal, like, oh, well, if you are, going to approach the conversion of your, desired outcome. And I'm like, who the hell talks like that? I like totally throw it all out the window and just be like, lose the jargon, embrace my own tone, go for it. And like, some people are going to love this book and some people are going to be like, no, it's too basic, or it's too elementary, or I want something that's a little bit more technical. And if so, there's lots of other marketing books out there for you. This one won't be the right one for you, but if you want this style of kind of more casual, a little more reassuring, less jargon, then this book is for you. So that's how I embraced marketing. Once I realized that you could just kind of put out, consistency is key. Consistency is really, really important. To consistently put out the same kind of message might attract back people that actually really want more from you. Like, oh my gosh, marketing's like a party.
I love that. That could be some sort of motto for,
Right.
again, in your marketing of your book.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk a lot about imposter syndrome at TribalScale and how combating it, because we have the mentality of fail fast and trying to push that imposter feeling out the door and just try things and be confident. Confidence is a huge thing in that. And even on my side with the copywriting, I work a lot in collaboration with Ailsa, bouncing back ideas and stuff. And there's also the mentality that there's no stupid question, there's no stupid idea. And when it comes to digital marketing, I think that is key as well, because just brainstorming, some ideas will get thrown out, of course, but then you'll find that little nugget of idea after brainstorming through all that muck of the first moments and the first ideas that come to your head. And just having the confidence and to know that whatever you're saying is valid and that a great idea might come out of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's really hard for people to push past that imposter syndrome a lot. I think kind of, as women, we're very kind of prone to it, especially. I think it kind of mostly covers all minorities and how we kind of approach kind of our work. So being able to feel truly comfortable with our own voice, I think, is always a challenge. But I'm really glad that you were able to get there, Avery, and write this book, because I think it'll be increasingly important, especially given the weird situation we're living in right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I do still have many days where I'm like, it's garbage. It's absolute garbage. It's not helpful to anyone. But one of the number one things that's helped me get past any of the gremlin, like that horrible voice in your head that says those things to you, is I look for evidence. I look for fact-based evidence where I can be like, okay, I might still think it's garbage, but it must not be garbage to the 5 people that just gave it a 5-star review on Amazon in the last hour. It must not be garbage to, the people that keep buying it, because even though there's a lockdown, it's still a bestseller. And like, even when I was writing it, I was like, okay, is this good advice, what I'm telling people to do? And then I would think back, I'd be like, okay, remember that client that you worked with and you gave that client that advice, and then they executed on that advice. And then they were able to actually make money off of that Google Ads campaign, or they were able to actually get more subscribers to their email newsletter. So even though like that voice almost never truly 100% goes away, at least I can battle it with evidence.
Right.
Evidence that says like, well, that might be what you think, but here's something that actually did happen. So perhaps this isn't the whole story.
Yeah, totally. I do something very similar where, like, you know, on those rough days, if I need kind of a pick me up or I need to kind of battle that imposter syndrome, I'll often kind of take screenshots of any kind of compliments or, you know, things that, you know, made me smile in the moment that are very kind of complimentary to what I'm doing, and looking at those and realizing that, you know, I might not be the best at like everything, but I have value, and this is my value, and people appreciate what I do.
Oh, I'm a huge fan. I have a folder on my computer of like screen grabs and things, and like and then like here I am in my home office. I've got like I keep like actual, oh look, that's kind of weird on the back screen. But I keep cards that people have written to me. I keep them in a drawer that just say like, when I need that moment of looking through and being like, right, I did actually help someone. It really does help to battle
a positivity scrapbook.
Yeah, right. It's good.
That's awesome.
I was just going to say, and now you have a bunch of 5-star reviews you can go back to feel that moment. Yeah.
Right. And not all of them are written by my friends and family.
There you go. So we're approaching the 1 hour mark here, and I figured just before we wrap up, I think people would love to hear, and I'm going to put you on the spot, Avery, but maybe a quick key takeaway for anyone who's listening to this and is thinking of grabbing your book and wondering what they will take away from it, the main things that could really help them, whether they're marketing themselves or marketing their business.
So the biggest takeaway that I hope you will have after reading See You on the Internet, you will have a boatload of very practical things. It's full of like, you know, I recommend you use this tool and this tool and this tool, and there's URLs, and you know, you'll be highlighting and using post-it notes to try and look up every tool that I recommend. But the number one thing that I want somebody to walk away with after reading See You on the Internet is a feeling like you actually can try and do a lot of digital marketing yourself. You know, and I talk a lot in the book is about when you might need to hire a professional, and I am a big fan of hiring professionals, but there may be some moments where you can do some stuff yourself. And the whole last chapter of the book is like a step-by-step, like ask yourself this question, now answer, you know, then ask yourself this question, then ask yourself this question. This is how you move through making a plan. This is how you move through executing on it. And then just go because hopefully you've learned enough to be able to just hit the ground running and really have the confidence to give it a try yourself. You're not going to break the internet. You know, give it a whirl, see what you can achieve, reach out to professional help when you need it, but just know that if you start where you are and you have some very measurable, achievable, specific goals, you really can do a lot of this stuff yourself. Even if you're like me and you have an arts background, like seriously, if I can make websites and do email marketing and all the stuff that I can do, then you can too, I promise.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's hugely empowering for those kind of small businesses out there right now. They definitely, you know, need that digital marketing advice. So yeah, hopefully everyone picks up a copy.
Woohoo!
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, there's some great knowledge sharing here, and we're so happy you could take the time in isolation to jump on our remote podcast. This episode will be available on Spotify, on Apple iTunes. You can find links to that on our Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn in the next couple of days that'll be published. And we'll have more episodes soon. And Avery, if you could just remind everyone where they can pick up a copy of your book.
Yeah, so if you go, I made a website for the book. It's seeyouontheinternet.com. Once I learned that domain name was available, I was like, yes, this is going to be the name of the book. So seeyouontheinternet.com has all kinds of information about the book, including all the links to all the places where you can buy it. If you want to find me on the internet, I'm Avery Swartz. I am at Avery Swartz in all the places, on all the socials.
Nice.
I'm averyswartz.com on my website. And, you know, we definitely all live on the internet right now, but I live on the internet like all the time. So, you know, ping me, message me, DM me. I love chatting with anybody. If you've got questions, you just want to chat. I love it.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule today, Avery. It's been really, really fun actually getting to sit down and talk to you for this hour. So we appreciate it very much.
Oh, thank you both so much. This has been like the highlight of my afternoon.
Oh,
Great.
Hey,
Bye. Thanks everyone online.